Hey everyone, welcome to episode 211 of the All Dolphins podcast on this Wednesday, January 31st, 2024. Last day of January. See, I know how to read a calendar. As you can see on the screen, we are joined today by two esteemed guests. Alfredo Arteaga in the bottom right corner, Simon Clancy in the bottom left corner for another episode of, what is it, Omar?
When podcast worlds unite.
Unite.
These are actually our 5 reasons, brethren, joining us. So it's an honor to be part of a podcast team. For those who don't know, these gentlemen, they've got a podcast. How many times do you guys tape a week?
Twice, but sometimes we could go as many as 3 times because we do a Q&A show on Discord. So, but the actual 3 of us, twice a week.
Yeah. Twice a week. And then the Discord, I would love for you guys to explain that, just because that seems to be the new wave of media. And I noticed Simon has abandoned us out on those Twitter streets, and has taken all of his knowledge to Discord. So what's that experience like?
I'm not sure that's strictly true. I run this very difficult balance of living in the UK where not that many people follow the NFL. And so having to sort of balance a load of different worlds in terms of sporting likes, and I tend to post about the NFL when everybody else in the UK has gone to sleep, which is and then operates for you guys in the evening. So the Discord thing's fun, actually. It's a decent community of people, and there's lots of lots of people that were felt a bit uncomfortable about social media, about Twitter and X as it became, and some of the things that were happening on there. So it's kind of it's a nicely moderated bunch of people. Yeah, I think so. Nicely moderated bunch of people from across the globe who kind of come together with a common goal. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's kind of what it is.
No, I definitely, I had been part of a Discord for gaming community, and I know my son is part of Discords for his gaming community, and it's just people who have common interests and they share and they talk about it, and I guess you don't necessarily get attacked as much on as you do on social media.
Because exactly that, because it's kind of nicely moderated, I think, and I suppose for whatever reason, I think Alf, Chris, and myself have built up a tiny bit of cachet over the years, which I think probably just helps people moderate themselves as well, actually, and kind of builds a little sense of community. Alf, would you say a little sense of community that everybody feels kind of welcome, and it's a nice little place to chat Dolphin stuff, really.
Yeah, and me and Chris essentially run the place with an iron fist too. So that helps.
You're out there cracking the whip, huh? Okay.
Yeah, but it's a really good community. We have over 2,000 members right now. You can become a member at discord.gg/onlyfins. We do film study. We're going to be doing some stuff on the Senior Bowl, and draft season is always big on there. We always have a lot of content during draft season.
Yeah, Simon is a guy that I lean on for draft knowledge. I'm looking forward to your draft guide, Simon. I begin this process at the Senior Bowl. I think is today's practice on television today?
Not sure, actually. Not sure.
I am watching it right now. So
okay. Yeah. So that means I'm missing it. Okay.
Yesterday, actually, Omar.
They had it on yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, damn. Let's get into some of this Dolphins conversation. Obviously, this is going to be a difficult offseason. I initially told people about the apocalypse that was coming, and everybody started throwing stones at me, telling me, "Oh, you're such a hater. You're such a hater. Why are you worried about then when we need to enjoy this season?" Well, you won 11 games. Wasn't all negative, even though the season ended on quite a negative slide. But now you have this challenge of rebuilding this team, building this roster. And I would argue to you that the roster and the team that they had around Tua Tagovailoa last year probably will never be any better than it was last year. And they were going to have some serious challenges building it back this year. What do you think about their cap situation? And also, how do you handle the Christian Wilkins decision?
Alf, do you want to take that first, or?
Yeah, on Christian Wilkins, I was initially really, really optimistic that they would get that done, and if they wouldn't get it done, they would just tag him. I don't think that's happening anymore. I don't think you could tie up $21 million with Christian Wilkins. You don't think
the tag is happening?
No, I don't think that's happening. Yeah. And if you look at it, I wrote it down. You got to get him somewhere in between DeForest Buckner, Jason Hargrave, and Dexter Lawrence. I don't think he's going to accept that because that's going to
Hell
place him
no,
somewhere.
he's not going to accept that.
That's going to be somewhere around 5th highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. So, and it'll give him an average of about 21 a year. It's not, it is Florida. So I'm pretty sure they're going to do a pretty good sell job on him. But the more I look at it, if he's going to insist to be in that Quinnen Williams, Aaron Donald realm, then he is likely out of here. And I
You
think
let him walk. You don't tag him. You let him walk.
I would try to tag him and try to monetize him, try to get something out of him. So that's going to be up to Chris Greer to see what he can get.
You talking transition or franchise?
Franchise.
Okay. And then try to trade him.
Yes. Try to get at least a 2nd-round pick for him.
So
if not, you're going to have to let him walk and take the compensatory pick.
So what's supposed you find nobody on the street who wants to take him up and just he's here on the franchise tag.
Then he is the sacrifice for the following year for the rest of the roster when they have to pay everybody else. And you're just going to have to let him walk for essentially nothing. So it's a gamble that they're going to have to take this offseason. But they could head all of that off if he could accept something in that realm, which I don't think he will.
Yeah. You had your chance for him to be compromising last offseason, and you basically botched that opportunity. And I was in full support of it. He had not performed like an elite player. He had no body of work that showed that he was an elite player. And then he said, okay, I'm going to show you. And here it is. Now, how do you deal with it, Simon?
Yeah, I think a year ago, the Dolphins wanted to pay him like Green Bay paid Kenny Clark, and I think Christian wanted to be paid as the best DT in football. And I think the Dolphins bolted it rightly because he didn't have the sack numbers. And then he turned in this year where he was as dominant as you could possibly hope for, and he delivered on sack numbers. And I think now he wants to be paid probably quite rightly as the best or one of the top 2 or 3 defensive tackles in the market. That might get reset with the Chris Jones deal. But I was in the post-game press conference after the Chiefs defeat in the playoffs, and he was at the podium, and obviously there was a sense of real disappointment. But I think you take away, and I think if you were to speak to any of the other beat guys that were there, I was stood next to Adam Beasley, and Beasley and I said, look, I think he's gone. He's died. You just got the sense that was his final moment in Miami, that I don't think he expected to be back. And the impression I got from Chris Greer's press conference a couple of days later was that he probably would be allowed to test the market if there was a market out there for him. But I think Miami have to try and get back into that 3rd and 4th round. You can't go for a team that has so many holes and only has a 1, a 2, and a 5. You have to try and get back into that 2 and 3 area. And I think tagging him and trading him is the only way forward. I don't think you'll get a 1st-round pick for him because I think the team that wants to take him on is obviously going to have to turn him into the highest paid DT in football, as well as giving up draft capital. So I think that's the wisest decision. You'd love to be able to keep the guy, and there are significant holes in the defensive line currently, with only really Zach Sealer under contract. But I just don't think you can keep everybody.
What is fair value for Christian Wilkins? If we're putting Christian on the trade block, which clearly 3 reasons, 3 yards a carry is doing. What do we hope to get back? Because I'm not giving up a 1st-round pick for Christian, and I don't think any team is.
No, I agree.
I think if you can get a 2nd-round pick, you're extremely happy. You're dancing in the streets, and you work from there. I think
a 2 and a 4, a 2 and a 5, a 3 and a 4. I think if Chris Greer came away and got back into that 3rd and 4th round area, I think secretly he'd be pretty happy.
Yeah,
3 and 5 is the price for Josh Rosen. Incidentally, I would remind Omar because Omar loved that trade.
Oh yeah, I love that trade. I really wanted that trade to happen.
2 quick points, if I may, from my end, and I will keep it brief. I will allow our guests to do most of the talking, but 2 quick points. What I would say about what Wilkins had not shown in his first 4 years, more so than just sack, was to be an impact player with the pass rushing. And it's not just strictly about the number of sacks, it's about affecting the quarterback. And he wasn't really doing that this first 4 years. And last year, the 9 sacks were great. Even beyond that, when he wasn't sacking the quarterback, he was creating havoc. And then number 2, if I would read Wilkins correctly, it'd be like, okay, you made me wait a year. I'm going to jump atop everybody else who signed last year. And to me, he's going to ask for higher money than any DT other than Aaron Donald and Chris Jones.
Yeah,
because those guys are up there in terms of talent.
Here's my area of discomfort. I can make the argument to you guys, and I think because both of you do film study, you would see where I'm coming from. I can argue that Zach Sealer was just as impactful, if not more, than Christian Wilkins. And how do I justify paying a guy $8 million a year, which is what I'm paying Zach Sealer, and then another guy $20 million a year? And we've been in this situation before where you create that dynamic where Xavier Howard, Brandon Jones. And I'm not saying that Zach Sealer is better than Christian, but they're at least on equal playing field. So
I think you have to ask the question: is Zach Sealer as good a player as he is because of Christian Wilkins, or is he as good a player as he is despite Christian? Without Christian Wilkins being there, and I suspect we'll find out this year. I think he's probably aided. Why? How couldn't he be? By Wilkins' ability, and I think Wilkins having an effect on Sealer is bigger than the effect that Sealer has on Wilkins. And I suspect we'll see that next year, depending on who they bring in alongside him.
But you could also say that Wilkins was positively aided by Sealer and
100%.
the ends,
100%,
and the coverage.
Yeah, of course.
You could make that argument. You've got two elite cornerbacks on the boundaries. They were locking down things and allowing them to set a franchise record. So now even though I said, okay, we want to see the sack numbers, Christian shows the sack numbers. Am I paying for the product of the defense, or am I paying for Christian? So it's going to be a very interesting negotiations.
But then you look at things like, he led the NFL in terms of defensive tackles, in run stops, in run stop win percentage, in batted passes. These are extra things that people don't necessarily take into consideration when you're weighing up his impact as a pass rusher. There are a myriad other things that made Christian Wilkins the elite defensive lineman that he turned into.
And Omar, let me chime in that I'm going to say I completely agree with Simon when he makes a point that Sealer benefited from having Wilkins next to him more than Wilkins benefited from Sealer, as much as I like Sealer.
Yeah, and I do too. I think he's next.
No, that was your point. I completely agree.
And I think they're all going to look at the cost benefit of paying somebody $21 million to play defensive tackle, because if you look at the highest paid defensive tackles, the ones that went the farthest, I got them right here. It's Vita Vea, Kenny Clark, Ed Oliver. They all went to the divisional round, and they all averaged $17 million a year. Which is where they wanted to be with Christian Wilkins last year.
There's an interesting situation that I think Miami might let play out, which is Baltimore's decision on Justin Madubuike, who's also a free agent, led all defensive tackles this season. Obviously went to the AFC Championship game, was a first-team All-Pro. I think he might reset the market in terms of defensive tackle contracts. And I wonder whether Miami just wait to see what happens with that before they do anything decisive.
You got to get ahead of that.
That's a very good point.
And here's the thing. This is the final point on the Christian Wilkins decision. We all know Christian is a consummate businessman and is very.
You know what you're trying to say?
No. Christian's about his business, and that was a business decision. You made him play with the risk of the injury all season, and now. You as a franchise, you're going to pay for it, because if you think it's going to be easy to sign Christian Wilkins, especially before the start of the free agency, which is why I say, even though you're $52 million in dead cap, you got to clear $72 million, because you got to make room to tag Christian on March 8th, because that's pretty much the only way that you're going to retain him. You need to buy yourself some time, because if not, you might as well offer him the highest paid defensive tackle contract right now, because that's the only way he's going to sign. Not when I'm saying highest paid, I'm talking about right under Aaron Donald and Chris Jones. I think if he's the third highest paid defensive tackle in the game, I think maybe you get a deal done. If anything below that, I think you might as well just slap him with the tag and buy yourself some time.
Another thing to look at, I think that the team is conscious about the expenditure in each unit. And if you look at that number, and let's say they pay Raekwon Davis at market, and they pay Deshaun Hand at market, all that's left to take them right to number one as far as the highest expenditure is $21 million. So they just don't have the money to pay Christian Wilkins.
They don't have the money to pay anybody, Alfredo.
No. And this is the problem. This is a huge problem.
Who do they have the money to pay?
Of course. And when you consider the injuries then to Chubb, Van Ginkel, and Phillips, in terms of they've got to do that. There is literally Zach Sealer is the only defensive lineman. Emmanuel Ogba's not going to be retained, but you throw in Cameron Good's injured.
Yeah.
What do they do? how do they affect a pass rush from interior and exterior? Because
Before
everybody's
October, that is an excellent question, Simon.
100%. How do they do it? How, and they only have, the first and the second rounder, and then a 5th, 2, 6th, and the 7th. It's not an easy job to do, and they're capped up to the eyeballs already.
They're going to have to sign, as the whole roster will be built, the back end of the roster, minimum salary 1-year guys, and pretend like it's going to be okay. But hey, that's their issue. This is the mess that they made, and obviously Steve Ross is going to write the big fat check to try to buy themselves another time, give them another credit card. Let's move on.
Hold on, Omar. Let me one last point on this. Raekwon's not getting, to me, he's not getting any kind of decent money because they have so many other needs to address, and he's not doesn't impact the game nearly enough, and he's not on the field nearly enough to where he's going to get money he probably can get somewhere else.
Yeah, agreed.
I would say the same thing of Van Ginkel. I'm not taking a $2.5 million contract from Miami again. I'm at least doubling up, and I'm getting $5 million, injured or not, from somebody else. So they're in a tough spot. Let's move on to some of these needs. We talk about where this team is, and Simon brought it up, and I've done a offensive defensive breakdown. I know you guys are doing positional breakdowns on a weekly basis on your podcast, 3 yards per carry. Where do you think this team has their top 3 needs heading into free agency and then heading into the draft? And I say this because I say this in that order because people don't realize you can sit here and obsess about what draft picks, and you could follow mock drafts, and you could, we don't have a clue what this team is going to look like until free agency's 2 weeks in. So, and your needs might completely be something polar opposite depending on how you proceed with this building this roster. So, Alfredo, what are your thoughts on what are the top 3 needs for this Dolphins team moving forward to 2024?
I think they got to start and stay with the interior offensive line. That's going to be extremely important. And I think on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to have to do some work in the secondary because I don't think that Xavier Howard's going to be back this season. So once you get past those 2, then you could get into the areas where you could augment the team a little bit. And, they're going to have to really thread the needle on the defensive line because, like Simon said, if they played thank God they don't play a game tomorrow, because if they played a game tomorrow, they'd just be Zach Sealer and Brandon Peely standing out there with nobody else around them. So they're going to have to do some work there. They're going to have to retain Andrew Van Ginkel. That's a lot of work. But you got to start and essentially end in the interior offensive line. You got to shore up left guard, center, right guard, because that's what makes your quarterback.
I have seen your work hammering this, and I'm an offensive line lover. I absolutely love it. I really don't. Yes, it would backups, and the game changed drastically when Connor Williams was out of the lineup. I think Connor Williams was the number 1 offensive lineman that they had on the team this past season. I have no idea where he's going to be from a health standpoint. I'm assuming he's going to be fully cleared probably in October. I don't know how people think these ACLs magically heal themselves in 6 months. That's not the reality, but I am not of the opinion that the backups, they weren't good, but they were not the problem. Are you saying that they were the problem, Alf?
I'm saying that Lester Cotton is not a starting quality left guard. I'm saying that Robert Jones is one-dimensional, and I'm saying that Liam Eichenberg is strictly a backup center in this league. And when you have Teron Armstead, Robert Hunt, and Connor Williams, your 3 best offensive linemen play less than 50% of the snaps in the season, your season is essentially short-circuited before Jalen Phillips got injured on Black Friday and before Bradley Chubb got injured against Baltimore. So,
but they kept them afloat. They kept them afloat. They kept them in the AFC Championship game to Baltimore with Liam Eichenberg as a starting center. And you say what you want about Liam Eichenberg. I don't think he played badly in that.
It kept them afloat. It kept them afloat, but eventually you run out of buckets to bail water out of the boat, and they drowned the last month of the season.
Yeah, I think protecting that interior, that offensive line, needs significant work. To touch back on your question, and the situation with Teron Armstead worries me as well when he's playing 50%. And we're not going to go into the next season and he's going to play 75% or 90% of the snaps. He's getting older and older and older. And unfortunately, as good as he is, that's going to decrease.
You don't know the powers of magical medicine and blood doping and, all this kind of other stuff, Simon. Come on.
That's very true. That is very true. I don't.
He can go to Germany.
If Armstead goes to Germany in the offseason, that's a good sign.
Huh?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
If Armstead shows up in Germany in the offseason, that's a very good sign.
Or
That's
he,
true.
Says he's going to take part in the Tour de France. That's also a good sign in terms of blood situation. But and to me, the interior of the defensive line, the offensive line is for me the number one concern. I think Daniel Jeremiah had it right the other day, and I think we'll get on to Tua in a minute, but he said that you can absolutely win a Super Bowl with Tua, but he said the way that you can win it is that you have to get home field advantage, but you have to provide him with better talent around him. People say, "What do you mean better talent?" He's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and he has, and they're excellent. But I think this team has a Tyreek Hill problem. I think they target Hill way too much. I think the backup receivers, i.e., from Waddle is fine, but on downwards, Barrios, Wilson, Craycraft, Ezukam, Chosen, etc., were just not up to the test when the two front guys got hurt. And I think that when Jeremiah said that, if I was Chris Carew and Mike McDaniel, I'd be looking heavily at investing a high pick in another wide receiver, I don't think they were too far off the mark. I think you just need to provide Tua with as many weapons as possible to make it as difficult as possible for defenses to try and counter what you can do on offense. And look, Mike McDaniel, we know what he does. We know what he brings to the table. We know that he's going to be in the lab this offseason looking at how to make that offense better. And I think that only works with even more talent at receiver and running back and tight end, et cetera, just people that can make plays. And, I think that's how you win with Tua.
Let me counter what you said, Simon, because I don't disagree with you in regards to the receiver unit was not good enough.
No, it wasn't.
They were missing a slot receiver. And I know 100%. People view Tyreek as a slot receiver, but what you're missing is a Jarvis Landry slot receiver, a guy who gives you that toughness, that physicality, that can catch the pass over the middle. And I know everybody thinks that's a tight end, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a tight end. But you said, and this is where I got a little bit uncomfortable, you said that it should come through the draft. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been here for 2 years. I know the struggles that rookies have learning this offense. Yeah, that's a huge roll of the dice to have to wait on a rookie receiver to learn the offense, even if it's a spot position.
Huge. I mean, look at Eric Ezukanma, who's struggled to pick. I know there's an issue in terms of a medical or whatever with Eric, but you look at the fact that he'd never taken a snap, he'd never taken a play call in a huddle in his entire life. At Texas Tech, everything came in from the sideline. In high school, everything came in from the sideline. He was literally learning how to take in plays and the verbiage that comes with that in an NFL huddle. So yeah, look, draft is an ideal world scenario, but and there are players out there. I look at Western Kentucky's Malachi Corley, who would be a Deebo Samuel type in a Mike McDaniel offense. But can they get up to speed immediately? That's a massive problem. And when I spoke to McDaniel in Frankfurt when he was over and we had that back and forth, he said to me that, I asked him about his scheme and the development of his scheme into next season and how he would look to keep one step ahead of defensive coordinators. And he was like, it's not my scheme. That's the thing that everybody doesn't realize. He said, I essentially, he said, I know it sounds obvious, but I essentially build it around the players and what they do best is how I build plays. Now, if you're removing the two best players, Hill and Waddle, because of injuries, because they're being targeted so much, because they're being hit so much, because they're having to run so much. If you remove the two best players who do everything as well as they do, how can you build an offense when you have such a gulf between number one and number two, and then 3, 4, 5, 6 on down? That is a very difficult dichotomy for Mike McDaniel to have to solve in the off season, because that unit has to get better. It has to, otherwise everything he's trying to do gets let down.
Poop, how do you improve this? Oh, yeah, you were going to say something else?
Yeah, to that end, on Next Gen Stats, their separation numbers, it's interesting because, yes, Hill and Waddle are right there at the top. They're both in the top 10 in separation numbers. There's no other Dolphin in the top 100. Number 100 is Devontae Parker at 2 yards of separation. So that tells you pretty much everything you need to know. There are 4 New England Patriots in the top 100. There are 2 Dolphins in the top 100. So
Is there a minimum number of receptions or targets to make that list?
I think it's a snap count. They had to have at least 200 snaps.
Yeah, and all those guys pretty much.
Because I have a hard time believing that Devontae Parker would get more separation than anybody on the Dolphin roster, including Tyler Kroft.
One of the questions I think heading into the season or into the off season is whether or not they look to move Devon Achane to a more receiver role, potentially to make use of his route running, which is excellent, his speed. I don't know. I mean, they can, you can almost see like a reverse Deebo Samuel role, whereas, Achane still runs the ball.
He does not have the physicality for that. And
no,
I know he's not.
Does he have the physicality to be a running back,
He's
you
a
have
weapon.
to manufacture touch. You have to manufacture touches for him because he's so explosive. He's so good, But how do you do that? Can you continue to live in a world where he probably only plays 10 games a season because of what you're trying to do with him in the backfield? So do you make it that you manufacture touches for him out of the slot? Do you I
mean, they do that. They actually did that.
But do you do it more? How much more can you do it, and how much more? I'll be interested to see how much more McDaniel pushes that in the off season in terms of trying to get him the ball more, but not in scenarios where he's going to get hit at speed by multiple people at the same time, which will, tissue injuries and all those sorts of things that have dogged him a little bit.
That's why I'd send him on wheel routes quite a bit. I mean, keep him on the outside, take advantage of his speed, and who do you cover him with?
I mean, go back to the Washington game and the touchdown to Hill in the first quarter. He was, if Tua looks to the other side, he's got 6 yards of separation and a touchdown on the other side of the field because he was one-on-one with the corner, and he absolutely blew past him. So, there are going to be opportunities for Achane down the field in terms of the passing game. So that will be interesting to see if they're struggling to get a receiver to, you look at someone like Juwan Jennings, who plays with the 49ers, who is a McDaniel acolyte, essentially, was drafted under McDaniel, played under him, is an outstanding blocker, and so understands the nuance of the offense immediately. You have to think that somebody like that is somebody that they would be looking to bring in as a high priority free agent, just because he knows exactly what the score is in terms of how the offense works and the machinations of making it work.
That's a phenomenal name, free agency, Simon. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. Poop, your thoughts on how to improve this team?
Well, one more thing about Achane. Also in the Buffalo game, the first pick down the middle of the field, deep to Tyreek, Achane was running on the outside, and he also looked like the defender was kind of leaving him to go double Tyreek. Yeah. So, I think that's the way to use Achane, not necessarily running in between the tackles 20 times a game or 15 times a game. Well, the first thing the Dolphins have to do is they have to figure out what they're going to do with their offensive line and their free agents, Kendall Lamb, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt. I would imagine they're going to do their best to retain two, if not all three of them. If they do, I don't think that the offensive line is a screaming need. They do have these issues on the defensive line. While I agree with the point that they need to beef up the wide receiver core, I would play devil's advocate about the issue of featuring Tyreek too much on offense, because I'm of the opinion that Tyreek is what makes this offense special.
Oh, agreed.
Sorry?
No, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%.
And that's the thing. And then if you de-emphasize him, and there's certainly some merit to that, it makes you more difficult. But is Tua if he can't throw to Tyreek 20 times a game? Will he have the same degree of success? And I don't know. I am not, even though I'm the Tua hater, I am not closing the door on anything except that I haven't seen it yet. Therefore, I still question what the ceiling is, depending on circumstances, how far they can go with him, how far they can go if Tyreek's not the focal point of the offense. I happen to think that Eric Ezukama could be a big factor player next year because of what I do actually, because of what I saw in training camp his rookie year, and then with the way that they used him in different ways, running the ball last summer.
And so why did you, if you believed in that, why did they shelve him at the midseason with a neck injury?
Well, obviously, I don't think they shelved him for you. Actually think that it was a wink neck injury that silenced him for the rest of the year?
I'm pretty sure he can come back. And if you chose River Craycraft over him, then that's the choice that you made. And River Craycraft, obviously Uzukama has a different level of physicality to him. And I love River Craycraft just like the next guy. But let's be real. If Eric Uzukama could really help you, would you have played Chase Claypool over him? Would you have played Robbie Chosen over him?
But you're suggesting there's a choice, and I'm going to believe that actually there was an issue with the neck where it was more cautious for them to sit him out the entire season. So let me finish answering the question. Then what I would do to improve the team, I think cornerback's going to be a screaming need, because I'm with you out there. I don't think there's no way the Dolphins can justify paying X what he's owed, because he's gotten injured the last couple of years. The play has dipped a little bit, and as with Tehran, when you get older, the injury situation doesn't all of a sudden get better. It just goes the other way.
Mm-hmm. Now to the fun conversation that Al Poupard is always looking forward to. The Tua, how do you handle the proposal? Do you ask him to marry you, or do you try to drag out this? Do you set a date? Or do you try to drag out this engagement a little while longer by making him possibly play on the 5th-year option and maybe the franchise tag next year? Or do you lock him up to a multi-year deal now? And at what price?
You can have that bone hand grenade, Alf.
Let me just add one last thing on the pass catchers. You can see it on the all-22, especially down the stretch.
Yeah.
They had Durham Smythe running corner routes. They had him running scissors concepts with Tyreek Hill. The Ravens, even the Cowboys, the Ravens, the Bills, especially the Chiefs, were absolutely ignoring Durham Smythe. If you're going to have somebody run those routes, you need somebody that the defense will respect. Because if not, you're essentially just drawing double coverage to Tyreek every time you line up Durham Smythe on his side. Now, on Tua,
Alf, was he not open, though, on some of those and ignored?
He was open on a couple.
That's not a Durham Smythe problem, then.
That's a Tyreek problem, Alan.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. Tua looks over there because both guys over there, and he's thinking Durham Smythe or Tyreek Hill.
I'm telling you, it's not going to get any better. They have no intentions of throwing to a tight end. None. The tight end is an additional blocker, and he might be out there as an outlet receiver. That's just not part of their offense at all. Yeah. But let's get to the meat of what everybody is here for. We need a game plan, Alf, of how to handle Tua.
Well, if I'm his agent, I could take a pretty hard line. Okay.
If I'm with a fragile quarterback, you're going to take a hard line.
The guy is top 3, top 5 in every single quarterback category the last 2 years of a 4-year career. Yes, I take a very, very hard line with the Dolphins.
Hard line at what price point?
I want to be in the Justin Herbert conversation as far as contract.
That's $50 a year, I believe you're saying.
Yes. Okay. Now that's me talking as his agent.
His agent. Okay. So
if I'm the Dolphins, I'm trying to get him in
a hard line stance. You want last year's price this year.
Yes. Okay. And I want it long term. I want the same guarantee that Justin Herbert got.
$133.7 million fully guaranteed and $193 guaranteed for injury.
Plus $1.
You're not going to get that $1. But so you want 5 years,
$1 than anything else.
5 years, $263 million.
Pretty much. That's me talking as his agent, and I think
you're
that they might even
you're a good agent, then Alf. You're a good agent. Okay. Not realistic, but you're a good agent.
Sorry. But if I'm the Dolphins, I'm trying to get him in under that. I want to guarantee somewhere around 115. 120, something that's near 40 a year. That's what I want to guarantee.
You're really trying to pay me 40 a year, pretending like I'm making 50 a year.
Precisely. Okay.
And why should I sign this?
Because we have a good system here. It's Miami. It's a good place to be rich. Okay. You're gonna be a rich man, Tua. So why not be rich here?
$40 million is a lot different than $50 million rich. That's a lot of.
Well, but if you're gonna get $50 million in Washington D.C., it's like getting 40 in Miami, Florida. Okay. So it's gonna take a sell job, but I don't think it's gonna be that difficult of a sell job. He's had an injury situation. Okay, he still has a little bit more to prove. All right. The numbers are there, but the numbers haven't been there in some of the biggest games. So there's plenty to hold up against him. But as far as the necessity of getting it done, I think it's imperative. This is the biggest challenge they have this offseason, because you cannot have that charge come online of $24 million
Yeah, you
when you
can.
have to pay other
Yeah, you
people.
can. Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. I mean, that's just restructuring 3 other guys. And I mean, for 1 year or 2 years of relief, I actually do agree with Alan. Whereas we're really talking about, do you want to lock up Tua for 3 years at 120 to 140 million dollars? And I don't know how I feel about that. I'm way more comfortable if I give him the 5th-year option at $23 million and then give him a franchise tag at $38 million. That's a lot different than $120 million. And and it does not give him the vote of confidence that he probably needs. But then your performance didn't necessarily give us the vote of confidence that we kind of needed. And it wasn't all on him. And I'm be the first to say, I'm sorry, a lot of those players, his top 4 offensive weapons were out there playing at 70% at their best. Your offensive line, the interior, was mediocre at their best. So, and you're playing upper echelon defenses and upper echelon quarterbacks, and everybody puts it on Tua, which I don't think is necessarily fair. But let's not pretend like he wasn't given 1 minute and 53 seconds against the Buffalo Bills and pooped the bed.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you, Omar, rather than Drew Rosenalf down there in terms of the agent. I think any contract would be one of the more unique contracts we've ever seen in the NFL because of what's happened both physically and on the field. And I say this as a Tua fan, as I am, but I am also understanding of the fact that he's 10-11 against teams with winning records. That for the second season running, we had a late season collapse. That whilst you don't completely put in his hands, as you said, there are certainly issues there. My biggest concern has always been that in the very biggest moments, he hasn't stepped up and carried the team on his shoulders. He did so somewhat against Dallas, and more power to him.
Don't short him the Chargers.
I was about to say my disappointment was
week one,
the
though.
Chargers. Yeah,
Chargers are Super Bowl team week 1. Don't take it away from him.
His best game of the season was the first game of the season. And it was an awesome. I don't think we should take anything away from how good his performance was. And I don't think what happened to the Chargers subsequently was reflective of his performance on that day. Because the Chargers had every single player playing healthy out there, defensively, offensively, Justin Herbert, everybody.
And they were 4-point favorites at home. Don't forget.
And they were 4-point favorites at home. And I think his performance there was extraordinary. And especially in the fourth quarter. But he did things in that game, moving the pocket, etc. He had the third down throw where he moved the pocket to Barrios. He had the big throw to Tyreek where he stepped up in the pocket and threw the big ball down the field that you sort of didn't see later in the season. And whether or not that was nervousness about the offensive line, I think his inability to create out of structure is the thing that concerns me the most. And I think if you look
at that guy over there.
Yeah, and I think if you look at what happened, I think it's true, Alan. I think if you look at the 4 teams this weekend past in terms of Jared Goff less so, but Brock Purdy, we saw his ability to escape out the pocket, to make plays rolling. Obviously, we know about Mahomes and Lamar, and it's just that thing with Tua, and you wonder whether or not that's a mental thing in terms of the offense is so prescriptive that he has to get the ball out because it's so timing, or whether or not it's a mental thing thinking that I almost retired this time last year and I have to get the ball out because if I get hit again, that could be the end. So it's a really difficult one. I think as a pure businessman, if I was Chris Greer taking that phone call from Alf that he talked about, I would be like, absolutely zero chance you're getting Justin Herbert money. I think that I would let him play on the 5th year and potentially franchise him because there are still question marks that I want to see answered before I invest the future in him. The problem with Tua is that he's really good. Is he good enough? But then the flip side to that is that he's probably better than 75, 80% of the quarterbacks in the league anyway. And if you give up on Tua, you're giving up on Mike McDaniel, essentially, because they are so well married together. And you've got to start again with somebody else who doesn't have some of the superpowers. And he does have superpowers, the accuracy, the timing, those sorts of things. that are so key to what McDaniel wants to do. So it's a really difficult one, but I think I would make him play on the 5th year and see where we go in a year's time.
And for those that are thinking that like this is outrageous to be holding him up, it did happen already. It happened with Lamar Jackson. So
it's a business, Alf, as well. It's a business. It's not just I'm sure, and Omar and Alan will deal with him all the time. He's a likable. Whenever I've dealt with him, he's a likable character. I spoke to him a number of times on the phone when he was at Alabama. I've spoken to him as a player in Miami, and I found him likable and friendly and honest and open. And his teammates clearly love him. But it's a business at the end of the day, and you've got to make business decisions about players. And it's about the name on the front, not the name on the back. And that's the key thing I think that Dolphins fans have to remember.
Poupard, obviously your position is well entrenched, and do you have a little bit more comfort that Simon agrees with you? 5th year and tag?
No, I mean, I've always respected Simon's football knowledge, and he's once again proved it by agreeing with my position that it should be 5th year option and then tag if Tua balls out. And then this is actually, as I've said before, this is a great scenario for the Dolphins because, I mean, is it so bad that, yes, it's going to cost them financially down the stretch, but if Tua answers the questions that remain, i.e., can he step up at crunch time against good defenses, then I think the Dolphins are going to be okay with paying whatever more it might cost them down the road while having more clarity and more certainty about having answered the questions that still remain. And Alpha, I do want to counter your point that you're throwing out top 3 in a lot of statistical categories. Well, if we're not blaming him when things go south, we need to accept the fact that the speed with which he operates on offense, i.e. Tyreek Hill, who's the biggest difference maker of any, also has to be factored in when we talk about, the yardage and all that. And this is where because yes, I do think there are a lot of quarterbacks who could step into this offense and have similar results, and maybe they would perform better at crunch time.
See, that's where I would disagree with you. I don't think. I think so. You listen to people like Kurt Warner and people like that, and they talk about how people don't, and I don't think anybody really understands the complexity of everything that he is in control of on that. Like, you go over there, if you and I were to go over to the park, right, or the three of the 4 of us were to go over to the local park with a ball, and I was throwing to Omar, but I was looking at you, and then because you were stood over there, but I was throwing. That's quite difficult. Just the 3 of us stood in the park, right? Try and do it when some of the best athletes in the world are moving around in front of you. You've got, and I'm not trying to defend the guy at all.
No, except Simon. I'm sorry. Hold on. Exactly. We're taking 4 plays out of 400 passes.
No. He does that so often. He does that probably about 8 times.
This notion that he's looking one way and throwing another way. If you're talking about, hold on a second. If you're talking about when he's looking one way to get the defense to move and then throwing over here, that's called looking off your receiver.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about what Matthew Stafford did on that final drive of the Super Bowl when they beat the Bears. I'm not talking about stuff like that. What I'm talking about is two receivers on the same pattern in the same area, and he's looking at, and there's only a 5-yard difference, but it's the eye, and you saw it quite a lot with the you could see it more sometimes on some of the Hard Knocks practice stuff in terms of how it is not 2 or 3 times a game. This is 7, 8, 9, 10 times a game.
And defenders, you talk about it in the Houston joint practices where the Houston defenders were talking about that, and and then they came up to him and they told him, the final practice play where the safety intercepted it, and he was like, "Yeah, you weren't going to get me with that eye trick thing you do," and it is part of his superpower. I don't think Allen gives him the praise and respect that he warrants in terms of throwing the spots, eye discipline, looking off linebackers, freezing linebackers, throwing to creating
QB 101. Looking off defenders is called
QB 101, but not a lot of QBs can do it.
Half the league
QB 101, but not a lot. QB 101, but maybe 10 out of the 32 QBs in the
Omar,
NFL.
where did you put him in our rankings yesterday? Where'd you have him? Like 13, 14?
12 or 13. 12 or 13.
But be consistent. Okay. So, and I had him like
but that.
I spoke to Nick Bolton after the Chiefs playoff game, and Bolton said to me that it is one of the most exhausting things to do, having to play Tua, because of how he makes you think on every single play because you don't know what he's doing because of the way that he manipulates. And he says it's not manipulation like looking over there and throwing over here. It's just
Freezing, guys.
This lane here freezes, and he says, and in a way that's more difficult because it's easier in a way to move your body to do what Stafford did in the Super Bowl than to do what Tua does, because the lanes and the gaps that he's throwing into are so much more narrow and they're so much more occupied because it's so many second level throws. And he said that's the difficulty, is that you are having to concentrate the entire time because you just aren't 100% sure of what he's going to. He said, and what he might do is he'll look you off 3 times and look outside, throw inside, look outside, throw inside. And then you step one way and he throws back the way that you always thought he was intending to throw. And he said, that's what makes it so difficult to work out. So I do think there is a level of difficulty that we as fans and journalists and all this probably don't quite grasp in the same way that maybe some of the defenders that go up against him do. But I think once you get him off that, then he can be more easy to manipulate. Hence why it goes back to the entire conversation that we talked about A, protecting him, and B, giving him more weapons, because I think lots of things have to be perfect for Tua to win big. And I don't think you would say that about Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes or whatever. And that's absolutely fine because there are so few of those kind of alien quarterbacks in the league. You just have to maximize what he has because, like I said, he's probably better than 80% of the people in the league anyway. So that's the conundrum we find ourselves in.
I have 2 important questions.
That's too high for me. And one more thing, I am going to say this, and Omar, you can throw out Arm Queen whenever you want. Get ready, Omar, on cue. This is where Tua needs perhaps more things to be executed perfectly because he just doesn't have the arm strength to overcome whatever tiny error there is there.
It is our quarterback. We know who he is, and he's not an athlete like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. And that's where I'm a little bit uncomfortable, whereas, okay, those are the quarterbacks that he lost to in this critical stretch of the season. Those are also arguably 3 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. They are different animals. And I have a hard time thinking if they were easy to find, other people would have found them by now.
Yeah.
And certainly it wouldn't have taken the Dolphins 20 years to find them, even though we've missed on a number of opportunities. But let me parlay this into an important conversation. And I just want everybody to give me their decision. I want you to pick Kirk Cousins or Tua Tagovailoa to lead your franchise for the next 3 years. Alf?
Well,
with Mike McDaniel as head coach.
Mike McDaniel as the head coach.
Why does it have to be 3 years? Okay.
Yeah, a 3-year commitment. Stop trying to be a single man. You're making a commitment here.
Well, if you know me and you follow me on Twitter, I am president of the Kirk Cousins fan club because I've thought of him as a top 10 quarterback for a very long time.
That's why.
Yes.
He
is no longer that.
Well.
He is older. He just took a pretty bad injury. I don't think he can operate the system that Tua operates with the pre-snap motion, then the snap point, then the mesh point. Remember that Tua's processing 3 things before he throws the ball, and then he has to read the defense.
Oh, Kirk Cousins is a phenomenal processor, very intelligent. You wait your turn, Poupard. You wait your turn, Poupard.
No, hold on. I got to interject because this is going to affect his answer. Obviously, Alf, if you bring in Kirk Cousins, you're going to tweak your offense to fit his skill set the way the Dolphins have completely done everything to fit Tua. I mean, this is not a Kirk Cousins same system or Tua in the system.
Make your choice, Alf.
Go ahead, Alf.
I love Kirk Cousins. Tua's younger and probably cheaper in the immediate future. So Tua.
Simon.
If it's a Mike McDaniel offense, I'm taking Tua, and I say that as somebody who likes and respects Kirk Cousins as both a player and a human being, as cheesy as that sounds.
I'm actually going to stick with Tua if it's a 3-year window. I know Kirk Cousins is going to. Kirk Cousins is I have the most respect of anybody in the NFL for Kirk Cousins in terms of how he handles business. First quarterback in NFL history to get a fully guaranteed contract. Others have followed suit. He's going to maximize his opportunity in free agency this offseason. I'm curious, and I think his money is going to set the bar for what Tua can get. Poupard, who you picking, Cousins or Tua? 3-year window.
Well, I don't like the 3-year window because to me, you would go outside
Those
of those
are your choices, sir.
Well, that's a bad question. How's that?
No, it's not a bad question.
How's
It's
that?
forcing your hand in a difficult position.
And then Alf,
I don't care about anything in the NFL past 3 years. Mike McDaniel is probably going to be fired in 3 years. Chris Kerr is going to be fired in 3 years. Steve Ross is probably going to have sold the team in 3 years.
Point. That's precisely my point. If you were to tell me for 2024 only,
you give me no. I want 3-year window. We're all in this together. 3-year window. Everybody poop or get off the pot, and you need to poop or get off the pot with the answer.
Don't use
you
my
taking Kirk Cousins or you taking Tua?
Don't use my nickname in vain. I don't like this 3-year window at all because if it goes south the next 2 years, Mike McDaniel, chances are, is not going to be there in 2026. So I don't like the premise of the question. I'm going to say that for 2024, my answer would be Kirk Cousins, and pretty clearly. For 3 years, if I'm going to play along, and we bringing economics into the equation, and the fact that Kirk Cousins is 35 and coming off an Achilles, and chances are he's going to be more costly, where I have 2 years of control with Tua. Under all those factors, ever so slightly, I lean Tua, but again, it's because you painted me into a corner.
Good. Now, a very important question. And I have been a proponent for draft a quarterback till you get a quarterback. That is an elite quarterback, and I don't care what the resources are. And I know you're light on resources, but you also suck in the draft. Let's be honest about it. Do you draft a quarterback this year and begin the process of developing him?
I probably would, but then I'm of the opinion that you should draft a quarterback every year just because.
High five, Simon.
Yeah. I think you probably develop Skylar Thompson as far as Skylar can develop, and that's not a knock on Sky. I think he's well respected, and I think he did a great job when he came in terms of the circumstance and being a rookie from a scheme that was completely alien to what Mike McDaniel was running. He almost beat the Bills on the road in the playoffs, or was at least part of that team.
Selected ahead of Brock Purdy.
Yeah, absolutely. So exactly. Those guys are out there, and I think you should be drafting a guy every year and trying to develop them and see what happens, because the very worst thing that can happen is they end up starting a few games and you can get back a better draft pick than what you used to get them with. So I would draft a quarterback on day 3 of the draft pretty much every year if I could.
Alf?
Absolutely. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this.
You're saying this is the year. 2024, limited resources, take a quarterback.
Absolutely, because I don't think going forward, the expensive backup quarterback is something that you can afford to do year in and year out when you need that money for other things. And I'd be remiss to say, if I didn't say this, our partner on the podcast, Chris Kaufman, loved Brock Purdy. So when people say that nobody knew about Brock Purdy, our partner actually did and advocated for drafting him in the 7th round that year. So
look at what we missed out on. Poupard, you drafting a quarterback in 2024?
For the record, I was advocating for Tom Brady in 2000 to be picked in this. On that neighborhood.
I need to see legitimate evidence of that.
Let me dig for it. I'll get back to you. It'll take a while.
Chris Greer's father was in New England.
Bobby.
Yeah, he's actually. If you go to the origins of the roots of who is advocating for Tom Brady and draft him, and books have been written about this, it was Chris Greer's father. So, hey.
Yeah, what's odd about the Tom Brady thing is if you go back and you look at his career at Michigan, he was underdrafted.
Yeah.
He should have been like a 3rd or 4th round pick.
He wasn't even better than Drew Henson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, weird, but look who's the GOAT.
He won more.
Yeah. No, I agree, especially since. But again, they are limited in draft picks, as Simon mentioned. It's a 1, a 2, a 5, 2 6s, and a 7. Look what they got out of 6 and the 7s the last couple of years. Elijah Higgins with the Cardinals, Ryan Hayes.
Who cares? They do well with
Omar, you're proving my point. Exactly. Who cares? So I have no issue with taking a shot on a quarterback out of the blue. You get something. There's nothing wrong with that. And last year, both you and I were kind of high on Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. Be interesting to see how that pans out with him in Detroit. He was an intriguing prospect, but yeah, I have zero issue with taking a quarterback every year in the league.
Now, Simon, to wrap this up, I want to get your thoughts about the overview of this draft class. I have not began my process. I really don't care until now, and I really won't pay attention until after free agency when we get to what the needs are for this team. But what do you think about this class?
I think it's strong overall. I think there are some positions that are absolutely outstanding. Offensive line, tackle, left tackle, right tackle is outstanding. You could look and see that there would be 6 or 7 tackles, right and left, that might end up going in the first round when you look at it. When you look at Joe Alt and Fashanu at Penn State, and Talisi Fuaga at Ohio, Oregon State, and Troy Fatano at Washington, Mims of Georgia, I think Patrick Paul, Jordan Morgan of Arizona. I think there's a number of guys, and that's just tackles only. Tyler Guyton at Oklahoma could all go in the first round. I think wide receivers extremely strong, especially at the top.
Extremely? Hold on. Extremely?
Oh, extremely strong. I think wide receivers I think it's an absolutely outstanding class. And I think at the very top, you obviously have, to me, the best wide receiver that I've seen come out in a long, long time. This is Larry
Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, and it's Larry Fitzgerald with speed is how I've been writing him up in the draft book. That's as good as Marvin Harrison is. He's as good as I've seen since Calvin Johnson, I think. But I think if you go beyond that, I mean, Rome Odunze of Washington might be my favorite overall player in the draft. He just has everything that you look for in a receiver. He blocks, separation ability, size, athletic ability. He's physical after the catch. He runs great routes. He's just a really good player. Neighbors at LSU and Brian Thomas, his teammate at LSU, are great. Got the kid at Florida State, Keon Coleman, a guy I really like. He reminds me of DK Metcalf, Xavier Legette of South Carolina. And then you go down to kind of guys like Troy Franklin at Oregon, Devontae Walker, who's playing at the Senior Bowl. I mean, probably wouldn't even fit in my top 10, but a guy who dominated at the Senior Bowl yesterday is Roman Wilson of Michigan. I mean, if I'm just looking at this now, he's not in my top 10, but was absolutely dominant yesterday at the Senior Bowl. So, there are guys, Lab McConkey, if you're looking for guys out the slot. But I think overall it's a really good, I think, edge. There's some good edge defenders. I think it's a really deep cornerback group.
What about defensive tackle?
It's not. I love the 2 guys at Texas, Murphy and Sweat. I think they're excellent. Beyond that, I worry a little bit about how good it is, and I think that's we were talking about this last night when we recorded 3 yards per carry because we did defensive line, and for me, I think free agency is that area. You look at somebody like Derek Nandy of the Chiefs, for example, as somebody that if you do get rid of Christian Wilkins, that's a guy that you might target. I know that Alf likes the Jones guy, Dawan Jones at Buffalo. But to me, I think defensive tackle is kind of light. I think
you always do Jordan Phillips again. I'm just saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always possible. It's always there.
It'll be a fun locker room that first day in camp, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ending my beef with Kevin Burnett. Okay, so if I could end my beef, me and Jordan Phillips, we could do a kumbaya thing.
Exactly. That's what
let me ask you this question regarding the draft.
Yeah.
This guy over here, he's obsessed with Roquan Smith.
Okay.
It absolutely needs a linebacker like that. Is there that player in this draft?
There isn't. It's a really weak linebacker group. I mean,
hold on. How did you just make hearts?
I don't know. That just popped up.
Oh my gosh! He just made hearts. I just learned something. Like, wait a minute, where are my hearts?
I don't know. I just look.
I mean, to me, the best linebacker in the class is Edgerrin Cooper at Texas A&M, and I think it was intriguing yesterday to see Daniel Jeremiah release his first top 50 of the year, and he had Cooper in the 20s. I think he was at 20, either 24 or 27. But he's 6'2", he's 226 pounds, so this is not a Roquan Smith kind of makeup. He is, very athletic, very aware. That athleticism
226 pounds?
Sorry, say that again.
226 pounds?
Yeah, 220. He's two. I think he went. Let me just look. He was 6'2", 227 at the Senior Bowl.
That's a little light in the tail.
Little light in the tail. He's very long, 34-inch arms. The guy that I think is really intriguing and certainly fits more of that is Peyton Wilson, who's the kid from NC State who won the Butkus Award. He's 6'4", he's 238. He is extremely athletic. He is, a really, really good player. But he's had 11 surgeries since high school. His ACL, shoulders, all sorts of things. There are plenty of
So he'll be in the discount bin, is what you're
injury
telling me.
warnings. Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of if you're looking for,
he plays with he does play. Sorry to interrupt you, Simon. He does play with a high AVG style motor.
Yeah,
so
he's
noticeable
really
on film.
good player. He's a really good player. But if you're looking for Roquan Smith, unfortunately, I don't think he's in this class.
They don't grow on trees. And by the way, Omar,
grow on trees.
Roquan Smith, 6'1", 235. He's not huge either. He's just all over the place.
Would you have made the trade for Smith over the trade for Chubb, especially given how well Chubb played?
You didn't even have to finish the sentence.
In a heartbeat, regardless of how well Chubb was playing last year.
And he did. Yeah, and he did. But yeah.
And safety position, because I'm a big fan of that UM kid.
Cam Kinchins. Yeah, Kinchins is a nice player. I think at the
first
top
round.
I think probably a team. You look at someone like the Green Bay Packers, who are desperate for kind of that middle of the field safety help. I mean, you look at somebody like Cooper DeJean of Iowa, and you wonder whether or not under Fangio's, and if say Brandon Staley comes in, DeJean is probably a really good fit to play multiple positions as sort of in a way, a kind of a CJ Gardner-Johnson sort of Swiss Army knife kind of player. But in terms of pure safeties, I think at the top of the class, you're looking at Kinchins, you're looking at the kid Bullock from USC, who's a nice player. The guy from Minnesota, who's a really nice player, Tyler Newbin, who I think that these are probably guys that you'd look at in the 25 to 45 region. Bullock's kind of a real center fielder, athletic, rangy, makes plays on the ball on the back end.
I personally think that's what they need for some put with Holland. I don't think Holland is a center fielder. They want him in the action. We've been with two coaching staffs who wanted him in the action, and I think you need that center fielder to complement him.
I think the issue with Kinchins is that he misses a lot of tackles on tape, and that's obviously something that shows up. But he's a see ball, fine ball gets attracted to him kind of player. So yes, Alan.
Can I interject real quick? I like Kinchins overall, but to me, I completely unhooked looking at him as a first round pick, and it's maybe completely unfair because it's one play. But look at that game-winning touchdown that he gave up against Georgia Tech, and to me, the lack of awareness, of game situation awareness on that play, is frightening.
Yeah.
Well, that shows up a lot, and as a fan of observer of the Hurricanes, I can tell you that you watch Cam Kinchins, and sometimes what he sees is not what is actually happening.
Yeah. Newbin is the guy to me who I think has got real upside. He's got instinct and range for days. I think he's a really interesting player. But again, as we've talked about ad infinitum here, you've got a 1, a 2, a 5, 2 6s, and a 7. You just can't answer all these bells in terms of positions. And look, I liked what Deshaun Elliott did this year as well. I don't think Elliott's a bad player at all. And I think, Brandon Jones, can you resign? Do you resign Brandon Jones? I actually like the pairing of Holland and Elliott. And although I don't think Fangio's scheme suits Holland's ability, I actually think it suited Elliott's ability. A guy I liked in Detroit and a guy I thought played pretty well for Miami this year in terms of what you're asking him to do. Box safety, run the alley, come in, hit people, make tackles, be an extra linebacker, all that kind of rotating into light boxes to heavy boxes. I think he did that well, but whether or not, if there's a distinct change in system, whether or not Elliott fits kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah, Deshaun Elliott for bang for your buck, what they paid for him, coming off the hash was absolutely fabulous. But that's another guy they're gonna have to sit down in a room and see what he wants.
Yeah.
Sure. I think there's certain players in this league that are 1 year to year minimum to $2 million players. I think Deshaun Elliott is in that realm. And I don't view him as a difficult player to re-sign. And if he escapes, he escapes. And there will be a lot of players that escape this offseason because they don't have that much money or wiggle room to get these deals done. But it'll be interesting to see how Steve Ross manages to give daddy the credit card, give baby boy the credit card, and allows him to extend this 2024 Dolphins team. Well, gentlemen, it was a pleasure having you on the. I was going to try to make hearts again. This is so weird.
Wow,
I am
that is weird.
Jealous.
This is awesome.
That Alec can make hearts and I cannot make hearts. Like, what is going on here?
No idea.
Anyway, but Simon, tell people about your draft guide.
It's. It'll come out when It comes out when it comes out. It'll come out when it's finished. I think I counted the other day. I think we're up to 309 players. Try and go through as many players as possible in terms of draft eligible guys. I try and watch a minimum over the year of 3 games per player, dig into their background. Some aren't possible because they play for schools smaller than I can get tape for. Do a lot of background stuff in terms of research, injuries, things that just might make you see that a guy ticks, whether it comes to work ethic or suspensions or arrests or all
Family
those sort of
life
things.
and what?
Yeah, just to kind of give you
whether players go to their 21st birthday party.
all of those sorts of things. All of those sorts of
Draft
things.
day
So,
reference.
Who was that player? Or was that Draft Day, the movie?
O'Callahan.
Bo
Callahan,
Callahan
yeah.
from Draft Day. Yeah, there was
Absolutely.
something. There was some Josh Rosen stuff in there too that was much like Bo Callahan, but I can't
Yeah.
remember it right now.
So, yeah.
So how do they get the draft guide, Simon?
It'll be on social media. We'll put it on our 3 yards per carry. And yeah, it'll be, I mean, it's cheap as chips, which is a saying over here, which means it's not very expensive. So I don't think we've set a price on it yet, but it's usually around between $5 or $10 or whatever. And it's, like I said, I mean, you've had one before. Omar, it's like 100,000 words, 300 players.
Yeah,
It's
it's a lot of work and definitely well worth it. Especially when you want the I still haven't found a Nolan Naraki replacement yet because I need somebody that gives me the dirt. That's what I want. But I do enjoy your draft guy. Alf, tell the people about the Discord for 3 yards per carry. Again,
Yeah, if you want to become a member of our Discord, all you have to do is go to discord.gg/OnlyFins, and you can become a member there for $3 a month.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate you joining us on alldolphins.com. And as you know, you guys know, everybody's got you behind a paywall, but us, it's for free. Which our fingers are not immediately on it. Definitely, you got my columns and Poupard's stories, and look at that. I am so jealous. How do I have to like raise it higher?
I have no idea.
Only one of us gets the heart making ability. All right. Well, we thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. And that has been episode 211 of the All Dolphins podcast, when podcast worlds collide. Hopefully we'll give you a little bit more of these later on, because this is a 5 reasons collabo right here. See you guys later. Tip hat. Did you give him the hat tip, Poupard?
I did again.
All right.